heavenly city of Jerusalem, the promised city, which, for instance, the Mormons envisioned and still do envision as being in Salt Lake City. Well, you can have your opinion about that, but at least there is one 5-star hotel now in Salt Lake City, and it's really, really beautiful. You should go there. I like beautiful hotels, and I tell you, it can hold its own with the Plaza or with the Waldorf. It's really beautiful. I don't think it has a lot of people coming there, because the Mormons, you see, and Neo, the hero, is constructed as a Christ figure. He is the one who was prophesied, and that he would return. He has been here, so he's not just a Christ figure, but a kind of there's the implication, at least, that he's a second coming, and that there are some who recognize him as such, and he has the power to do very, very big and important things, possibly to change the matrix from within, who battles the representatives of evil, and who is killed but comes to life again. So this is a messianic figure of major proportions. And that is reinforced in various ways. I don't have to go into all the details. Even such details which have been called to my attention by somebody who wrote about this, that, for instance, when Neo enters the ship Nebuchadnezzar for the first time, the camera pans across the interior of the ship and rests on the make of the ship, which is what? Mark 3, number 11. This seems to be another messianic reference, because in the Gospel of Mark, 3rd chapter, 11th verse, this is what you read. Whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and shouted, "You are the Son of God." Now, these guys knew all of this. They are having fun with this, but they are also, sort of giving certain points. Yet, what kind of Christianity does the Matrix represent? Certainly not fundamentalist Christianity, or even what might be called mainstream Christianity. Rather, it is quite obviously an alternate Christianity, which in fact is now increasingly known, and with which I was preoccupied all my adult life and some before. If you are not terribly familiar, you can see a very good restatement of it, for instance, in Elaine Pagels' latest book, Beyond Belief, where this outstanding scholar strongly suggests the existence and power of an early form of Christianity represented by such works as the Gospel of Thomas and others. Now, I am not about here to give you an even moderately detailed description of the Gnostic worldview. I have done that elsewhere. I've written an entire book about it myself not so long ago. But let me just say that it is important for us to remember that there is let's say, an approach to reality and to life, which very, very closely parallels, but in an ancient pre-technological setting, the world view and the reality view of the Matrix, and that is ancient Gnosticism or Gnostic Christianity, where the fundamental proposition is certainly identical with that of the Matrix, namely that we live in an illusory world, that we need to cut through that illusion and awaken from it, that when we awaken, we are not going to awaken, at least not right away, to something very, very pleasant and very, very good, but rather we are going to see things even a lot more darkly than we see now. But the result of that awakening to the presence and the power and the conspiracy, the activities of the darkness, the result of that eventually may be our achieving of freedom from those forces. So it's a very, very much the same sequence of liberating insight that we find in the Matrix. Now, the ancient Gnostics, of course, had their own mythos, just like the Matrix has its own mythos as to how this condition came about. And that's very natural because, we are weird creatures. If that has escaped your notice until now, then maybe this is the time to recognize it, that, one of the weirdness of the human being is that we can't really deal with a situation unless we have an idea how it came about. The diagnosis somehow always includes what the medics call etiology. How did it come about? It's very, very important to our minds. Even if that etiology is balderdash. But when we account for a particular condition by how we think it came about, that sort of sets us at rest up to that point, and then we can go from there. For instance, depth psychology, psychoanalysis. Here was Freud. He saw that a lot of things were wrong with the human mind. A lot of people are terribly neurotic. A lot of people are worse than neurotic. They are psychotic, and so forth. And, Freud was a good man. I spent once, over 2.5 years of my life researching his life and his teachings. For money, I wouldn't have done it otherwise. Not that. That's not the kind of thing that I undertake as a labor of love. That's labor. But let's say, he was very well intentioned. But again, what was his first concern? Even before. No, not even so much how to remove these afflictions from the human mind, but how did it come about? Of course, the implication is always if you could find out how it came about, then that would give us very important clues as to how to deal with it. Anyway, that's a very, very important consideration. So every one of these systems, these Gnostic systems, has its own mythos. Gurdjieff has his mythos of the moon and how the moon split off the earth at one time, and there are these nasty creatures there and they are keeping us enslaved and so with everybody. And the old Gnostics had their own. I don't need to go into those details, but let's just say they accounted for it in a very powerful mythological way, which I think has much merit. The only thing that I will mention is that they definitely disagreed with the way that the Jewish and Christian religion of their time, which even of today, accounted for, let's say, the askewness of much of our present condition by the fall from paradise. They said, the Gnostics said, no, there was no fall in paradise. It wasn't due to the fact that the snake was talking to a woman, and then the woman talked to a man, and then they ate some kind of a nondescript fruit. That this is hogwash. We find ourselves in the situation where we are because there are certain powers that want us to be in the situation, that want us to be enfeebled morally, intellectually, spiritually, in all kinds of ways, because there are their own agendas. It's very much like the same principle that St. Paul refers to is when he says we fight not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and so forth, and spiritual wickedness in high places. Now this is very, very much this motive. A spiritual wickedness, however, the character and the activities of which are concealed from us until we discover it. So let's say, these are the fundamental recognitions are there. Some of the, let's say, the details don't matter all that much, and some of them I'll allude to now. So there is no really mythic structure that I know of that parallels the Gnostic, let's say, that parallels the myth of the Matrix as intricately as the Gnostic myth. both in respect to the human problem that humans face as well as to the solution. So, the wisdom, Sophia, again, I won't go into details, wisdom was in trouble at one time. But wisdom was in a predicament. And wisdom became unwise in a certain sense and created an archon, a demiurge, who then became our captain.